Hi guys, welcome back to a mentor and yet another video blog from me. Welcome back to Spain. Weather continues to be fantastic down here, so I'll keep to do these vlogs outside if you don't mind. So today I am going to continue talking about how to get that precious first job. Alright, and some of the things that I will mention in this vlog I probably mentioned before in my video how to get through an airline interview. I'll link to that up here. Please look at that one and view this together with the information that I'm giving in this vlog, and continue watching to the end, because as always there might be something new that you can snap up along the way, and you don't want to miss that by not watching the video to the end. Alright, so first of all, you have now managed to get all your licenses, okay? So you have spent all of that money and all of that time in order to try, well, to get the licenses so that you are eligible for applying for your first airline job. Now, this is where you are going to have to really put in some extra work, okay? So up until this point, your path has been fairly clear, as in, you know what you need to do in order to attain these licenses. You know that you have to study, you know that you have to make the exams for the ATPL theory, you knew that you have to go through your check ride, and when all of that is done, then you're suddenly out in uncharted waters. So what are you supposed to do then? Well, as I mentioned before in my previous video on this subject, you have to apply to jobs, all right? You have to apply for as many jobs as you can. And also, and I want to stress this, you have to be flexible of where you are going to live. I can't stress that enough, right? You will probably not be able to stay at home in your mom's house. Probably won't work. If you are in Europe, it's great, because we're now part of the European Union, which means that you can apply to aviation jobs within the entire union. You have the right to work everywhere. Please do so. There might be an airline that employs people in the UK, or in Ireland, or in France, or in Spain, or in Italy. Wherever you might find it, use that wonderful tool which is the internet. Look for aviation jobs. There's also a host of aviation job apps available on App Store now. Look through them. There might be something there for you. Talk to all of your friends. You will probably, through your flight school, have built up a little bit of a network of people who are interested, well, in the same position as you, but also instructors in those flight schools. And since you have been looking at YouTube, for example, you would have found people like me, for example, or other people that are already in the industry that can give you some valuable tips. So use everything, don't stop, continue to apply. You know, go on to all of these airlines that are looking for cadets, for example. The cadet schemes are normally very good. I'm not for pay-to-fly programs. I think that they are atrocious, they are a pest, and they should disappear. But I am all for airlines that are taking in cadets, where the cadets have to self-sponsor their own type rating, because that's really the reality of the airline business at the moment. There are a few airlines around that will sponsor your type rating, which I've mentioned in previous podcasts, but generally they will then bond you, or they will reduce your salary for the first couple of years in order to pay for that type rating. So it is kind of a stepping stone into the airline business, the type rating. Or for those of you who doesn't know what a type rating is, it's the specific course that you have to do on each heavy aircraft that you're going to fly. And generally it will add on another about 25 to 30,000 euros onto the training costs. So there's a lot of money involved here. But if you manage to get into one of these cadet programs, that is generally a bona fide good job. So, or it might not pay fantastic money in the beginning, but eventually it will lead to what you're going towards. So as I've been saying before, you will have a couple of tough years. This is why I'm stressing that you need to try to keep your training costs down. And if you can't keep your training costs down, try to keep the costs down on living. Make sure that you cook your food at home. Don't go out to restaurants. Try to live at home. If you have a flight school that's close to your home, maybe you can stay at home and save some money, or you can go to a different country where the costs of living are lower and also the aviation training is lower. There's a school out here in Spain, in Girona, where I live, which I might actually go and visit on one of these days and do a bit of interviews. So, you know, I am not sure exactly how much they charge, but I'm fairly sure that they might be slightly cheaper than, for example, CTC. However, there are benefits to going to C2C as well. So all of this you're going to have to check out yourself. But as I said, try to keep your living costs low, try to keep your costs low in total so that you can afford to maybe pay for your own type rating if you manage to get into one of these cadet programs. All right. So that's one thing. Make sure that you apply for everything, that you pull in all the contacts that you might have. You know, maybe you have a rich uncle somewhere. Maybe your mom and dad knows someone who has an aircraft that needs someone to fly it. I mean, when I was looking for my first job, I looked everywhere. And you'll be amazed to find out that there are some of these small taxi companies around that maybe fly Piper 31s or Senecas, stuff like that. They do exist. And they are, if you can't find anything else, it's a great way of gaining hours and making sure that you keep flying and that you add experience onto that precious CV that you use to get into your next job. So everything works, you know. If you're flying gliders, that's also good. If you're flying around with parachuters that's jumping out of aircraft, that's also good. Anything that keeps you flying and adds onto your experience is good. Okay, as long as it's not dangerous, it's good. So keep looking for everything, don't turn down anything, make sure that you are working constantly to get that first job. That's the only way. They will not come to you, all right? They won't. There's so many people out there with aviation, with commercial pilot licenses that are sitting without a job that would kill to get a job. So the competition is fierce, you need to be aware of that and work hard in order to get that first job, all right? Be aware of that. So, then something else that I think is fairly important, and it's actually a little bit funny that I'm mentioning it here while I'm doing a YouTube video, but that's something that you have to be aware of that many people doesn't really think of, and that's your online profile, okay? It's becoming more and more common that all employers, this doesn't just go for the airline business, it goes for any business out there. It even goes for when you have to rent an apartment. But that employers, they look at your social profile when you are being considered for a job. And what do I mean by social profile? Well, I mean this. I mean YouTube. I mean Facebook. I mean Twitter. I mean anywhere where you are publicly stating your opinions or your profile in any way. Okay? So think of that. I know this is not very relevant for you guys who are just looking into starting your training, but for you guys who are actually looking to get your first job, you should definitely start thinking about this. How do people perceive you if they don't know you and they go in and they Google your name and they see what pops up? Okay, think of that. Think about your privacy settings on your Facebook page, for example. So, what not to do, okay? On Facebook, remember that basically what Facebook is, it is like you going out 50 years ago, standing in a square somewhere and screaming to everyone around you what you think, what you eat, what your pets are like. Okay, that's what you're doing. You're doing that publicly, and people anywhere can see what you're thinking and what you're doing. Now, if you would be actually doing that, if you would actually be standing in a square somewhere and screaming to people what your cat had for dinner last night, you would probably think 1 or 2 times before you did that. But people don't do that on Facebook or on the internet generally, because it feels like you're only speaking into, well, you're tapping something on your phone while you're watching TV, or you're liking something. All right, it doesn't work like that anymore. So employers, and this goes especially in the States, this is very common, that employers, airlines or other employers will hire companies that will have a look into the internet profile that you have, your online profile. So what shouldn't you do? Well, I would be very careful with posting a lot of pictures of you being out partying every Friday. Okay, hanging out with friends, great. Everyone hangs out with friends. Social life is very important. It's actually very important in order to attain a job in the first place. But drinking booze pictures, pictures of you being extremely hungover the day after, complaining about it, probably not a fantastic idea if someone were to go in and look for someone to employ. Think of it from their perspective. Okay. Another thing that you have to completely refrain from doing, and this is very important, okay, racism. Liking updates from racist organizations or parties or whatever. That is a complete no-go. Don't do that, okay? First of all, I think that it's obnoxious myself, but also because that is discrimination generally, and employers will be very, very careful with employing someone who has those types of views, which is completely understandable if you think about it. Another thing is drugs. Drugs within the airline business is complete no-go. You cannot do it. You shouldn't do it. You should never do it. In my view, it's very bad from every single perspective. But do not like pictures of marijuana plants, or people showing off drug paraphernalia or anything like that. Okay? You should know that within the airline business we are being fairly regularly tested for drugs. Okay? So once in a while there will be a guy turning up in the crew room, taking hair samples from different parts of the body, examining them for traces of drugs. Okay? Which is, in my view, fantastic. It's great, because no one that works within the airline business should ever deal with these things. So, but remember that even taking a puff of marijuana will stay in your hair for months to come. So keep completely clear of drugs and do not mention them or like pictures of them or anything like that on your Facebook or your Twitter or your Instagram pages, something like that. So be very, very careful of that. And basically, it's fairly common sense. Like, if you think about your online profile as something that an employer will actually look at, then think of that. Anytime that you do something on your Facebook pages, think that someone might look at this and they might question whether or not you are suitable for a specific job, depending on how that is. Now, I won't go crazy on this, okay? And most airlines or most employers probably won't do either. I mean, we're all human, things like that, and we should all have fun. But these kind of things that I've just mentioned now, you should stay completely clear of, because they will be there forever. I am very careful. I know that these videos that I am doing on myself, some employer, if I am ever to change job, the employers will most likely have seen these videos. So I'm very cautious of what I'm telling people. But I do want to put this out, because I do think that a lot of, especially young people that are getting into the industry, they don't really know how much damage they can do themselves by just doing things slightly wrong in this matter. Okay? And this also goes for something that I mentioned in my last videos about, my video about don't complain. If you are ever to change jobs, if you're moving from one airline to the other, or even if you're moving from different, that doesn't have to do anything with aviation. If you've been working as a sales assistant, if you've been selling tacos in a taco stand, wherever it might be, when you're moving, don't disrespect your previous employer. And as you're working, never post things about where you're disrespecting your current employer. And that kind of speaks for itself, because obviously if you were to employ someone and you were to actually access that person's profile and look through their flow of pictures and things, and you see them constantly mocking their employers, complaining, things like that, it's likely that they will assume that that's how you are going to be in your next employment as well. So, be cautious, be polite, always act on your online profile, on the internet, the way that you want to present yourself, even if that would be off, in the real world. So act that way, and it is kind of common sense, as I said before. However, I do realize that it's maybe not something that to think about. It will be in the future, though. I'm sure that in a couple of years people will be very, very aware of what they do and don't on the internet. But at the moment, this is just in the beginning, where employers are starting to look into this. They're using it as a tool to make sure that they're employing the right people. Of course, they want to employ the right people. But people are not really paying attention to this yet. So remember that if you're in the stage where you're looking for your first job, then you should be starting to clean up your online profile a little bit. As I said, just Google yourself, see what kind of pictures that comes up. And if you find something that you're not particularly proud of, something that you wish you hadn't done or something, maybe you can go in privacy settings, maybe you can delete that video off YouTube. something like that, to kind of make sure that you're starting to look better. There's also online actually firms that are specialized in managing your online profile, which you can Google if you think it's really bad. But generally it's just keeping your privacy setting correctly set up, and you know, being yourself and being nice and polite and courteous to other people. So, you know, those are a couple of things. Apply to all the airlines or all the aviation jobs that you can get. Pull all your contacts that you might have, and there might be contacts that you're not thinking about. So remember that. Even you can ask your friends, your relatives, they might have contacts that you haven't even thought of. You know, that uncle that used to be employed for a company that has a private jet. Maybe they need someone, you know. There are... Sorry, as you see, I'm sitting fairly close to the road here, so that kind of causes a bit of noise. But you'd be amazed if you start to think outside of the box how many possibilities there are out there to actually find jobs that you didn't even think of in the beginning. Okay? Then make sure that your online profile is correct, that it doesn't show you in a bad light, basically. Prepare. Look at my video about preparing for and how to pass an airline interview. Go out, search for things on the internet like suitability tests. Continue to practice them. Keep it going so that you're always ready to go in for an airline interview if you would need to. And what else? Well, you know, those are kind of the main things that I would say. Then there are particular things that you can do to prepare yourself for an actual interview or to get into an actual airline, but I'm not going to go. This is just a general type of thing. Okay, so that's it for today. Continue, as I'm always saying, continue to send in questions and suggestions about what you want me to cover. I'm getting a lot of questions about costs and how to get your PPL and things like that, and that's why I was saying in the beginning of the video I might be talking to someone at an actual flight school. So send me questions if you have questions about what you want a flight school representative to answer. Then send that in as well, and I'll include that in the questions that I might ask to these people. Okay, so like, how much can I expect it to cost? What are the entry requirements? What kind of preparations should I do prior to? Stuff like that is what I'm thinking of asking at the moment. Okay. But for now, I wish you all a fantastic weekend as always. Keep flying safe, and keep posting comments on the videos if you like it. And I'll see you next time. Thank you.